In this video I'm going to go through a pretty easy concept referring to extrema, and what that's talking about is, okay, what we call your maximums. Okay, so maximums are high points, and something that we also refer to as minimums, your low points. Okay, and there's two different types of maximums and minimums. You have what we refer to as local, which means that they just are actual maximums and minimums. Okay, there's nothing really special about them besides the fact that they're there. Then what we refer to as absolute, which means that they are the highest or the lowest. So clearly here, there's not another single point on this entire graph that will go above this one. So that's why it's called the absolute. And then, since this graph doesn't actually continue past here or past here, that's why this would be referred to as an absolute minimum. Alright, so we'll start looking at some of the examples that we've actually been studying. Alright, so here we have a polynomial function. If you notice, it is negative and even because it's going down and your arms are together. Okay, but this point here would be referred to as a maximum, and it's actually the highest point. You can look in both directions. There's nothing that's going to be higher than that. Okay, so for that reason, the absolute maximum would be at 0.514. Okay, then here we have this point. Okay, it's also referred to as a maximum. So for that reason, you'd have a relative maximum at y equals negative 1.93. Alright, another important point, it turned directions here, change directions, so this would be called a minimum, and in this case, if I look over here, since this continues to go down forever, this couldn't be the absolute minimum, so it's referred to as a relative. Alright, so as I said, there is no absolute minimum because your graph continues to go down forever, and your relative minimum would be at negative 3.084. Okay, it is the y value. Alright, so now on to our next example. Alright, so you're going to want to find your turning points at change directions here. Okay, and so this would be considered a C. Is it the absolute highest? No, it's just a high point because it continues to go up. So this would be considered a relative max. You actually don't have an absolute maximum because it continues to go up forever. Alright, this next point, right here, it changes directions. So it was going down, and now it's all of a sudden going to go back up. So this is a minimum. And again, you're just trying to figure out if it's the absolute lowest. And clearly it's not, since you have all this stuff below it. So that would be considered a relative minimum. Alright, so this graph has no absolute minimum and a relative minimum at negative 16.9. Alright, so here's another polynomial function. Okay, so looking here, okay, your graph goes up and changes directions here at this point. So it's clearly not the highest that the graph will ever reach. So it is a max, but it's a relative max. Okay, so this indicates a relative maximum at 0 and no absolute max. Now this next point here, okay, this is a minimum, but because this graph will continue to go below that point, it also is a relative minimum. So it's very important that you understand the difference between absolute, meaning there's nothing that will ever go past it, okay, and relative, which just means it happens to be a high or a low somewhere on the graph. Now, hopefully this helps you. Watch it again if you need the help, but good luck.